we've got a really great presentation. One of our lead engineers, Matt Boggs, who spent a significant time with AT&T and Sierra Wireless prior to coming to Cradlepoint, will be facilitating today's conversation. Cradlepoint, we have the great pleasure and honor of working with several first responder agencies, public sector agencies throughout Southern California, from Riverside County Sheriff to Los Angeles County Fire Department to Orange County Sheriff, San Diego Fire Rescue, Los Angeles Police Department, LA Sheriff, you name it, Verdugo Fire Authority, and I apologize if I've missed anyone in between, Santa Ana PD, and the list goes on and on, in addition to mass transit, public health officials, and if you cast your vote on site during this last election, you're actually touched by a Cradlepoint router as well. So we have a limited time with you today, and also look forward to finding out who's going to win the door prize, so I can get a nice Cradlepoint backpack out the door to you folks. So we'll work with John and David on that. So without further ado, I'd like to toss the baton over to my teammate, Matt Boggs.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you very much. Always so generous and kind with your words and your leadership here in the role. I have the distinct pleasure of representing Cradlepoint today and discussing some of our solutions that have been rolled out as part of the response to COVID, along with just looking at what we can do to help you going forward. And honestly, from my perspective, Carrie mentioned, I've got 16 years in the industry. I started out with a little company called Airlink, which was purchased by Sierra Wireless, spent some time in there and came over to AT&T for 7 years and was part of supporting the SLED public sector team there. And I had the good fortune and benefit of having an opportunity to move to Cradlepoint, where I am now the SE that supports Northern California, state of California, which is really not only where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, but also where I've spent the majority of my career. And on the back end, you know, there's a lot of people that are involved in this industry that have a passion for it. And for myself, Carrie, and people that have family, friends, or loved ones in there, it's not just a job, it's a mission. I've spent several years with my local county sheriff search and rescue as boots on the ground rescue to searching and tracking and supporting the team. I've worked in different entities and volunteer in different solutions. So I've been where some of y'all go. I've been where some of the teams you support go, and I understand the importance of communication, of hardware and solutions that works when you need it every time, because when the world's at its very worst is when we really expect you and the people you support to be at their best. And that's what Cradlepoint comes to offer, is our absolute best. So what I want to share with you today, I've got some slides to share. This is not meant to be a monologue. Feel free to shoot questions over. We will have some time at the end to discuss questions, but I wanted to share some information about what we've been doing, especially since COVID. COVID for us started February 7th of 2020. I got the first call going into having to set up the ability to have multiple agencies in a network on a federal piece of land that was not designed for it, not intended to have this support set up. So we had to have an air gap network. There's a lot of things going on. And what we ran into as we looked at this is some of the key challenges that we run into just in the field in general is we need speed. We needed to scale it because we needed to be able to take this solution and deploy multiple agencies in the same footprint and have them isolate their networks and have the ability to ebb and flow and grow as the solutions that they were implementing became viable. And then we had to secure it, and it had to be simple. The last thing anybody needs to do is relearn the wheel. We don't need someone that has to go to PhD to use our equipment, because everybody that we work with has a secondary task, a tertiary task, and a primary task, and managing the network is not one of them. So we had those 4 key things to hit, and those are the four things that we really found were important when we were doing these deployments. Looking at those solutions. Now, there are fixed solutions that are going to be set up. There are the mobile and pop-up sites, which is what we're seeing a lot of today. And there are the IoT solutions that go in that are longer term. And the great thing is Cradlepoint plays and works and has integrations into all of those. And although we're going to focus on the pop-up sites today, just be aware that everything that we do in a very dynamic and at times chaotic environment with the pop-up sites for testing and now the inoculation and the vaccine distribution, we obviously can do those in fixed sites and locations that are going to be longer term. So we have solutions that fit into the various places where your end users and yourselves are going to need to put some kind of data transmission when you can't run wires, either because it's not an option, there's no time, it's covert, whatever it is you need to do, we've got something to work with it. And as I mentioned, we have different solutions. We have the home office solutions for your staff that needs to work remotely. We have IoT, we have the vehicle and mobile solutions and mobile assets, and we definitely have fixed branched and fixed locations, because that's really where we started as Cradlepoint. That was where we cut our teeth and really hit the industry running, was the fixed locations. But we've done so much in all of these. And the pop-up locations, we had that in the retail world, we had that in other places. But with COVID and the healthcare need for it, it really brought some things to light and helped us move forward with opportunities to realize what Cradlepoint brings, and the flexibility and mobility we have allowed for things to be addressed that were much more challenging if you try to do it with traditional wired services or trying to use on-site services that might or might not be available, because we have these going in parking lots, in office buildings that were empty. We had these going into old facilities that were built of plaster and lath and stucco and didn't have great coverage, and you couldn't just use a Wi-Fi access point. You couldn't grab a consumer hotspot. The mission that's being served today is far too important to leave it teetering on what we give Joe and Jane consumer and the road warrior to go out there and do their business when they're traveling, when they're allowed to travel. So our solutions really go into what can we do, especially for the pop-ups, what can we do to bring your network into the field? What can we do to bring what you would normally have in a clinic, in a facility, in some place where you've got all the creature comforts you need, out in the middle of, not the best case scenario, sometimes the worst case scenario. And those problems include, there's no usable network, wired connections aren't available. It's a mobile branch in general. You've got a vehicle asset that has to travel from location to location, set up, do what you need to do, and then move on. So you can't really grow roots. There's no moss on those stones. They've got to keep going. And the complexity and the risk, beyond the fact that it's not cost effective to try to go and pay for the wired connections, get the wired connections, it's not reality just because of the amount of time it takes. So it really had to be wireless. And the solution was ultimately using a Cradlepoint LTE solution. And with that, we were able to have virtually day one pop-up connectivity any place it was needed. And it was really interesting to watch this as a person who had trained in mass dispersion of inoculations or treatments for toxicity or something, and some of the other things that I'd seen over the years, to see this go into action and what the challenges were that we never really saw or thought about when we were training for this in the field. So what is the most important? Well, we've got to have the availability of the devices. We've got that. We've got distribution partners. We've got people across the country that we can work with to make sure that you have the product you need, where you need it, when you need it. And that's not just the Cradlepoint routers that come with our solutions. That's not just the hardware. It's the antennas. It's the variables that we have partnerships with. The grab-and-go Pelican case that has a battery that I can run out in the field and sit down and use that temporarily. The unique antenna options that are going to have to be used because you've got that one place where you just can't get cell coverage just right. There's always that oddball. We have the experience for that. We also have the opportunity, and we work directly with FirstNet, with Verizon, with all of the the AT&T, all the carriers, and all of the nationwide public safety networks that are established and that are being established. We're certified. We work with them on a daily basis. So we have those relationships. We offer the 24/7 support, and we offer centralized cloud management. And all of that is important when you're trying to manage multiple areas of operation. And again, you don't have the staff and time to sit and plant somebody in front of a PC and be watching all these wheels turning. There's just too many mission critical things for that. So that's part of what we saw when we were doing these deployments. The ability to do all that is really just the implementation of what we've been preaching, what we knew we could do. It was getting to see that roll out into the field. It was part of that, and I'll say blessed, because it was an experience, and I was really proud and happy to be part of it. We as Cradlepoint were tapped in the very beginning, as I mentioned, as early as February of last year, in addressing some immediate concerns here on the West Coast. One of them was the multiple operations that were going on at the Travis Air Force Base, north of where I live, and multiple agencies that were showing up, and they were having to set up their comms for addressing and dealing with patient assessment and patient tracking and different things. But there was also the cruise ship that, for those of you that watch the news and remember and haven't tried to put all of 2020 away in the circular file, that cruise ship that was rolling around for several days, or weeks actually, in the bay, waiting for them to be able to dock and bring those people that were potentially exposed to COVID in to process, to give them the treatment, to take care of them. That had to be done, and it had to be set up on the fly. So we were able to do that. We were there at the Port of Oakland, Cradlepoint, and we were working with FirstNet on that project. And we were able to set up the devices, get them to process the people through, get them the assistance they needed, routed to the next locations. And all of that was done smoothly and effectively based on the ability to integrate those solutions into the overall Cradlepoint offering. Along with that specific deployment, we also had all of those pop-ups that were being set up for testing and for processing. And we had hundreds of healthcare entities putting up individual sites. So some of these larger healthcare providers that have national presence had to be able to address that. And there's the security concerns and HIPAA compliance. There's the ability to process the data as efficiently and effectively as possible and make sure that you've got your patients who are already in distress and already challenged and dealing with this unknown, that they are handled as efficiently and effectively as possible to make sure that they get to go back to where they need to go to take them out of the exposure, to keep the flow of people moving and to keep the process moving forward. And all of that came together, and we saw that we had this great solution that we were able to scale on a large degree, depending on the needs. So it was something that we were very thankful to be part of the solution and to be part of determining what could be done to improve the scenarios that were unfolding as our nation was starting to grapple with this pandemic and this pending this generation-altering event. The key thing for me and the takeaway that I have over the last couple months, I spent a lot of time with people that are military and other aspects in my community service, and Semper Gumby is a phrase that we've used quite often, especially with some of our events. Always flexible, and that's one of the things that came across with all of this. Was Semper Gumby wasn't just a saying or something we laughed. It was a way of life, and it became kind of the mantra for going forward. And we've seen it continue into 2021. And that's where looking at the ability to do all of this as we did the testing and the setups to address that, now as we transition and look forward at the disbursement of the vaccinations and the different things that are going on. Not only do we have all the original challenges, but now you have the need to have a facility set up so that the person that just received their inoculation can have a pause period to wait for any kind of rapid onset adverse effects, any kind of allergy, or any other challenges that might occur. So there's that secondary site. You've got lines of people in queues. You've got the ability to use these Cradlepoint devices and the solutions that we've built to put monitors, to put informational stations along the way to keep the people informed, to keep the people connected. The ability to connect not only the medical professionals, but the people that are there for treatment or other people, or bringing other agencies, all these agencies together to work together. And one of the things about our solution, we've got amazing hardware, we've got great solutions, we've got all this connectivity, but none of it matters if you can't manage it properly, if you can't handle the solution properly. And so one thing that we're really proud of and that we love and that we absolutely, you will hear us talk about every chance we get, is the entire NetCloud suite. And that is all the things that are encompassed when you acquire a Cradlepoint solution. And the gem there, the key is the NetCloud Manager. So transitioning forward and looking at that, NetCloud Manager is our cloud-based management system. It's a single pane of glass that allows me to see my deployments in a simple, easy to look at, very, very open view. Grandiose, big view, but all the way down to the granular view of a single device, a single user on a device with just a few clicks based on my needs. And that allows me to manage not just a single deployment, but multiple deployments across multiple territories, across multiple states. This tool is used by our consumer customers and our enterprise customers and our retail customers to manage things such as kiosks and other retail locations that have anywhere from 10,000 up to 40,000 or more. And they have a person or two people that manage those using NetCloud Manager. With the public sector, we know that there is always another task that needs to be done. We know there's something more important than staring at a screen. So this tool is extremely important for doing that. And as part of that, as we build this into scale, from the smallest deployment up to your entire fleet, your entire disbursement of fixed or mobile locations, temporary or permanent deployments, we have the ability to configure those. You can actually take the devices, you've acquired your Cradlepoints, they're being shipped to you from our factory up in Boise. where our support is based with our 24/7 support here in the U.S. Following the sun, we have support. We have support here in the United States, and it is 24/7, 365. But we have the ability to say, hey, this agency has acquired these devices. They go into your NetCloud Manager, and you as the operator can go in and preload those with your configurations, with your deployments that are already configured, that you know this is how you need it to be. And you can do what we consider the zero-touch deployment, where it comes in, the SIM card is put in, or the SIM card is activated, the antennas, it's deployed, and when it turns on, it just works. It connects to NetCloud Manager, pulls down configuration, says, I know who I am, I've got this, here's my settings, and it allows you to roll them out with consistency and continuity, removes, and I'm guilty of this, as I'm sure there's a few people in the crowd that might sheepishly raise their hand. I've got 10 big fat digits, and every so often after my 10th or 15th modem, I would slip a digit and throw a setting in there wrong, which would cost me 10 or 20 minutes of trying to figure out why it wasn't connecting back in the day. This helps eliminate that. I can use group configuration. I can do lots of things to help move those deployments forward. And then define and assign policies to control and securely implement the deployments. That was one of the things that came up with the various COVID sites and the response sites, is not only the ability to do all this, but to secure it, to monitor it and maintain it. Because there are some times we have people that are on multiple agencies. We have some where there's civilian volunteers and agencies and operators that need to work in the same infrastructure. So we can isolate and bifurcate their traffic. We can filter it, content match it, check it, and we can do all of that through NetCloud Manager's various features. So as we move forward and look at that, one of the things that I want to touch on is just the fact that we do have things like application aware QoS, making sure the applications that are important to your use case are the ones that get the priority access to the data that you're getting. You're going to get as much data as possible. The devices are going to work on the network as best they can. But if there's something extra special that has to get that mission critical data stream, we want to make sure that that gets the quality of service rating above email or web traffic, YouTube, things of that nature. Application aware traffic steering is another option that goes into that, where we can say this traffic is only going to go out this SIM card. This SIM card is dedicated to my GIS traffic, to my CAD traffic, to my ROIP radio. This other traffic is going to go out this alternative path. Maybe it's a second SIM card, maybe it's a different path, maybe it's satellite, but we can manage that on a group. So that is very, very helpful and useful when we're doing these deployments, and in general, when you're doing any kind of deployment. The ability to look at and see that single pane of glass view, and I can look at these menus and say, hey, I know what's going on with the health of my network, I know how many devices are on, I know what my data usage is. I can go ahead and look and go, oh, I see that I have 178 devices and there's 170 online. That's what I expect. Okay, cup of coffee, move on. I can see different things that are there that I wouldn't have to dig into to get deeper to find the data, because it's right there on the front of my screen. Going into the network health and demystifying some of the challenges of the network health. What is my uptime? What is my carrier experience? What is the quality of experience that my end users or applications are having? And these are all parts of what's integrated into the Cloud Manager interface through the NetCloud operating system that runs on these devices. And we do have, and it's not something I'm getting here today because this isn't as much a sales pitch, this is more informative, but we do have differences in licensing. We have the Essentials license and the Advanced license, and some of these features are part of the Advanced license. So that's kind of a different conversation. But the key thing is your cellular health, your failure events, your uptime, your traffic steering activity, all of that can be monitored and maintained and looked at in a very simple scale here with the NetCloud Manager. We do have the ability, and I touched on this, of addressing security concerns, doing content filtering and management of the intrusion detection, intrusion prevention aspects of our security platform that can be implemented if it doesn't exist, or if you're trying to mirror or mimic a network that you have in your wired world, but you don't have the ability or don't want to try to take all of that policy and bring it to this temporal site. So we do have the ability to do that. And the intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, firewalling, all of that. Firewall is turned on by default when you pull out of the box. This is advanced features. This is the ability to turn this into something that's hardened to protect your end users from each other, from themselves, and from the outside world. And then just continue to maintain that and monitor the different aspects of it, including content management, like I said. So if you get into something where there's the compliances of CIPA compliance for schools, you get into compliance where you want to make sure that somebody at a site that you've set up isn't looking at inappropriate material because it's a group view in family site. And I had sites like that for fire response, where we had evacuees that were staying in a large area, kind of a shared area, and we had families and children and people all mixed in. Well, we don't want somebody in the cot next to your child looking at something they're not supposed to. We don't want people, it's an easy way to protect yourself and protect the people that you're taking care of. With our mobile assets, we have mobile locations we talked about in the beginning. And one of the big things, one of the most important things that we continue to see is coverage analysis and coverage capturing and understanding what our coverage is, how our vehicles are performing, where they are. So with location services on our devices that are considered part of our mobile fleet, I can actually capture vehicle location cellular coverage and have it add a bread map to NetCloud Manager. I can zoom down to that individual device. I can go click on any of those little dots that you see on the screen, and it'll bring up a timestamp, GPS, and some RF information. More importantly, I can zoom in there, and now instead of having an operator, an officer, a deputy, or somebody within your agency says, hey, the coverage is terrible between 5th and Main. Well, 5th and Main might be 7 city blocks. That's a big stretch. You can actually capture this information, look at it, and see, is the coverage a challenge? Is there a loss of connectivity? Is there some information there that you can gather? So this is something that allows a more granular view on an individual asset that's out there rolling around. This is something that we have people use for coverage analysis if they're looking at which carrier they want to go with, or they're going for a dual carrier solution, which is really where it gets interesting, because you go to our next option, which is our heat mapping, our coverage analysis. So as I'm doing the capture that you saw on the previous screen, I can keep that, and I use that and the capture from whether assets are reporting into my NetCloud Manager to present it in this heat map that can go anywhere from current time to up to 30 days back, because obviously this coverage analysis is going to have a stale date. No one cares how great the coverage was 6 months ago, but we can look at that and see, hey, where is my coverage? Which carrier am I using? Which carrier has problems here? Is it really gotten better for carrier X versus Y? And if you look at the features on the right of the screen, we can actually see that I can sort by health, I can sort by the individual carrier, and I can actually get down to the frequencies. So this is great for coverage analysis, for making decisions on which devices you're going to deploy in which locations with which carrier, as well as for troubleshooting and being able to go, hey, carrier X, this is where I said I've had a challenge. We've talked about it. Here's a map showing where I have connectivity issues. This has become very popular and is very handy when people are making decisions on solutions and what to go with, and then maintaining it. And if you think about it, the longer that you run it and the more devices you have, the more fulfilled this map becomes. So it's definitely a feature that has become very popular. One of the great things about the management, not only is it I don't have to look at the screen and monitor it and stare at it and hope I know everything's okay, but it's also the ability to have the alerts and proactive intelligent notifications to an individual, to a group, with a little adjusting to a group of text messages or via SMS. But this is something where we can have proactive alerts go out that actually notify the person who's doing the administration of changes in the network. That could be a changeover from one WAN type to another, from your fixed wired location, your satellite or your fiber, over to the cellular, or between one cellular carrier to another. Some changes in the health of the hardware, status of the modem, a lot of different options here. But the ultimate thing is, with this in place, you can be notified and aware of it before your end users realize there's a challenge. So you can proactively instead of reactively get involved and see what the challenge is and address it as needed. And the beautiful thing, and I say this and I jokingly, we're not Skynet. We don't have a device that is fully self-aware. It's not sentient, but they are intelligent enough and well designed enough that they do have the ability to detect challenges, to fail over, to fail back, to reboot and do certain things. And if they resolve a problem that way, it's great, but you still should know about it, just to make sure that it's not a challenge that's going to replicate itself at the worst possible time. So these alerts are definitely helpful. And one of the other aspects that people find very useful, especially when there's challenges in the infrastructure connectivity, is the ability to use the Cradlepoint as a local place to connect your other hardware to and be able to remotely manage it as if you were there plugged into it, whether it's plugged into the console port of a router, or there's a camera, or there's some other piece of hardware that you need to look at because something is failing on that site. So if I have a challenge somewhere and I know that something is down, my Cradlepoint has brought me up on LTE and it's working properly, but I have this challenge that I don't know what I have to send out. I don't want to send the cavalry. I want to send the right operator with the right tools and the right solutions. So being able to remotely manage and get in and do the different terminal services and whatnot from the Cradlepoint as your portal is something that's very popular and very helpful, and quite honestly something I've used myself when I've had failures at my house and I've been away. So the secure remote management is definitely something that is of benefit and continues to be of interest to operators. I didn't want to take the entire time we were allotted to go through slides and to do a pitch, because I really wanted a chance to open up and ask you, our audience, what it is that you have questions about, what it is that we can do to help you better, or if you have things that you're working on that we can provide a service and support for that we aren't currently. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts in the time we have remaining, I would love to hear them. And Carrie and I would love to help just hear what you have to say. Good, bad, or indifferent. We're here to hear all of it.
I think one of the call to actions that we would love to leave you with is that we are local. We are a US-based company. We are growing by leaps and bounds. In November, you might have heard a little hint of news that Ericsson acquired Cradlepoint. We knew that we were either going to be going public as a company or an acquisition was in the near future, just due to the success of the product overall in the market globally. And so we are so excited and thrilled to be a part of Ericsson and being able to contribute to the edge device for Ericsson's network. And so we would welcome the chance. And again, I know sometimes on these calls, you don't want to raise your hand or ask a question. So please, we'll make sure that you have our contact information. David and John have been phenomenal in helping to set up today's conversation with you. We would love to talk a little bit more about your environment and how we can make your lives a lot easier through efficiency, security, reliability, and all through connectivity. From gigabit class to 5G, private LTE, we play very handsomely with all the carriers, and as Matt noted, there are some specific use cases with FirstNet, and the coverage map that he shared was utilized with FirstNet as well. So we'd love to take it a step further and have another conversation with you. Again, I know how uncomfortable it can be to raise your hand or to ask questions. And so I know that we're just at about time right now. So I will zip it if there might be a question. Otherwise, we would love the chance to continue this offline.